because my weekend was just so freaking busy. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna remember everything. Get the text today. I'm like, oh, I don't remember Jack doing shit.
Yeah, well, we had like 2 like beepers, so my bad.
No, it's fine. It's just one of those weekends more busy than I plan to be.
Yeah.
I hear you. Yeah, I got a lot going on, and I got this bachelor party coming up, and then like I'm going to Italy like right after that. I almost wish I had a weekend just to chill,
Yeah, I feel that because I've got a retirement party I'm going to Saturday night, and then Sunday night I've got a dinner party with some other friends, and I'm just like, oh god, this week is just the busy week.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's always like all or nothing. I feel like.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're live.
Yeah, we are live.
I
gotta send Tony the link.
I can find it. We can get going.
Okay. All right. 3, 2, 1. This is Josh from BatYard's Finest, bringing you the finest Batman, Superman, and more in pop culture. As always, I have my 2 co-hosts here. We'll just go in order.
What's up? I'm Tony.
Hello, everybody. This is Jerry.
Well, thank you guys for coming on as always. I honestly, this is a segment of the show where we have BSBS. We just kind of talk about news, but I honestly don't really have anything since we did the last episode not that long ago.
It's been
I know the last episode I did a lot because I don't even think I saw anything interesting, but I want to preface this. I still hate TikTok, but I'm on it just because a lot of the news that I get is on there, and most of it's pretty accurate. But if you guys were up for it, I did see someone propose a superhero question.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, this is pretty interesting.
All right, I'm up for it.
And so, basically the question was, if you got transported into, like a DC or a Marvel universe and you got to pick, like one set of superpowers. So, like you could get the superpowers of Superman, you would get the Flash's speed, things kind of like that. Would you choose to be a hero, a villain, an anti-hero, or just, kind of your own vigilante freedom fighter? I know what I'm going to pick. I'm just curious what you guys might pick for an answer.
So, like, you could pick any superhero, you get all their powers, or just like one?
You get all their powers. But, this time, if you were like, I wish I could be Superman because, I like what he does as a hero, but I feel like there's certain things, I would do a little bit better than him. Or if you were like, oh, I want to be a villain like the Penguin or Lex Luthor, somebody like that.
All right. Well, mine's obvious. Mine's obviously going to be Superman because you're going to get all the powers. You get all the powers. And I probably would just do my own thing, like be my own kind of vigilante. I don't think I would be as good of a hero as Superman. I would like be in and out, I guess. Like I'll help out when I can, kind of thing. That's about it.
That's a good one. I like that.
What about you, Tony?
I don't. For some reason, I think it's just because I started watching the show, but I'm thinking Daredevil because I don't know. I think I'd be in New York. I think I'd be more in like the vigilante kind of thing where Daredevil's kind of like working in the shadows, like sneakily doing the good things and like holding down a corporate job. Not corporate. He's like a small firm lawyer, but like I don't know. I think I'd probably
a corporate job.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I think I'd be Daredevil, kind of.
I'm actually going to go very left field from everyone else. So I would choose, I would guess more magic-based powers like Zatanna and, Dr. Fate, that realm of magic. But I would choose to be a villain.
Okay.
It's nothing against, anti-heroes, vigilantes, or heroes. Being a villain with magic and just knowing the full extent of, what magic has the potential to lead into further. And then also just the fact it's not too often, you see a really great villain that has magic-based powers that's, super memorable outside of, a handful like Dormammu when Doctor Strange went turned into a villain for a little while. Oh God, I can't think of his name. Baron Mordo. Just more villains like that. But for me, I was just thinking, if I was a villain, I wouldn't even be like a Kingpin level villain. I would just be a petty villain with just fantastic magic, because it's not like I need $50 billion in the bank. What am I going to realistically do for $50 billion?
You could buy a country.
Yeah.
I was thinking like, I might run a small, like scam or whatever as a showman, just kind of swindle people like that. Because, you don't have to be a great villain to be a memorable villain, like Polka Dot Man, Mustard Man, other kind of small people like that. But, it's, playing the villain sometimes is just as fun as playing the hero. And for me, I'm like, I know the issues of getting into the big time, because when you get into the big time, you're like, okay, I always got to look over my shoulder, or God forbid, somebody decides like, oh, I'm going to go the Joker route, and I'm just going to go absolutely balls deep and ape shit on the world and just let everybody know how I feel about shit. Excuse me.
Well, I get it. Yeah, you get you get your benefits and everything, and like it's not like you're like trying to take over the world or like be sinister. Really, you're just trying to make some coin on the side. So whatever. Yeah, maybe, you have the potential to like be, masochist with your magic powers for sure.
Maybe be a villain in like a tri-state area, someplace where people know me, but nobody's gonna really care.
What the So this is my question. So is this like in the DC universe, or are we in like our reality now and we just have those powers? Like
we're in our reality now, but we just have those powers.
So then there's like nothing to like. There's not going to be like any like catastrophic like villains to like fight or anything like that.
Obviously not, unless somebody else chooses to be a villain of that caliber.
We're gonna have to fight Jerry.
Yeah, I would just, as Superman, I would just like travel the cosmos. I would just like go everywhere. I'd be more interested in that than, I'm like, I'll help out if I'm here, but I'm gonna fly around space. I'm gonna see what's out there.
Yeah, because it's like, what's the easiest gig you can get as a magician? Kids parties. And who loves kids parties?
Make so much money.
You make a killing.
I would definitely use Superman powers to make money, like 1,000%.
Just sometimes you just have to, even thinking within the box, there's a lot you can still do.
Yeah, you could still do stuff legally and like make a shit ton of money with any of these abilities. So, yeah, either way, I'm making coin. I'm not gonna not use it as my benefit for that.
Yeah, because I saw that and I was like, you know what? I think that's an interesting question. Like, if you could have a set of abilities, but this is based in our reality, our universe, and you get to kind of pick what you do with it. I thought I was like, that would be interesting. Because, obviously, if you wanted to just be an end-all, be-all, you could choose some pantheon god from, Marvel and DC and just have, like, Webster's dictionary level of abilities and different crap you can do. But then it's like, okay, when you're at that level, somebody else comes in, then what you're doing is essentially, like playing God with the whole universe. Like, all right, I'm going to create this half. You can destroy that half and, just keep going back and forth like that. That's bullcrap to me. Let me be a petty villain and just enjoy my time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I was thinking like, say you're traveling the cosmos as like Superman or just whatever, and then you go so far you can't even find planet Earth. Like, I just had that thought. I'm like, that'd be fucking scary. So, yeah, I guess with Superman's powers, you would kind of know where you're going. Hopefully, I don't know. That'd be pretty eerie. Like, you're like, oh, I made it all the way out here. Oh, I can't find the fucking planet where I want to go back.
But yeah, I thought, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna save this and propose it on the short section, because I know we all had last week a bunch of stuff we just
I honestly don't really have anything else. Tony, you have anything?
I've heard that new Disney movie is struggling. That's all I got.
Which
There's an animated movie. I don't remember what it's called.
I didn't know there was a new one.
I didn't even either. Is it like a computer one?
Yeah. What the hell is it called? It might be Pixar. Oh, Elio.
I've never even heard of that.
Yeah, I think it's like at 30. I don't know the numbers, but it's not what it needs to be to make money, which is odd for Disney to hear. I don't know.
I don't even know what it's called. What is it? Elio?
Elio, Elio. I think this is probably the reason this movie's failing so much. None of us knew what it was.
Disney Plus or
there was another movie out. That's
it's a Pixar movie.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. This looks really weird.
Deadline says Elio misfire could hasten demise of original animation, which it's just a headline, but I did
kind of hear. I saw some headline too that Disney was like considering going back to 2D animation for like some new projects, but like that's just hearsay right now. And it's nothing like it.
They should. Not everything needs to be a 3D.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they should do like half and half. Honestly,
there's nothing wrong with 3D, but 2D has just become such a lost art form and style that because I'd actually watched a couple of clips from that 2D Looney Tune movie that you had mentioned.
Oh yeah,
episodes ago, Josh. Yeah. And I was like, man, I forgot how good it was because everything is just so in your face with these vivid and bright popping colors to grab your attention, and then everything else they just kind of blow up with that same vividness that is just, wow, all of this is nice. I don't need that.
It's definitely like pops too, like you're saying. It's way sharper, like in movie quality and 2D animation. They definitely have the budget to like really make it pop. And that, I definitely recommend that movie. Like, what is it? Looney Tunes when the Earth blew up, I think. That
Something
was like
that.
Yeah, it was. It just came out, and it was like the only 2D movie that's been in theaters like in a decade. It feels like, in my opinion,
Yeah,
so,
I think so.
It was definitely really cool.
Actually, I do have one thing of news because a coworker of mine just told me today. So I don't know if you guys were fans of 28 days later, 28 weeks later. But he over the weekend, not weekend, but the other night, he had watched 28 Years Later, and he was saying it was just absolutely terrible.
Really?
Yeah, like everything about it that they had done was just awful because it doesn't really follow the story that they built up in the first two movies. And then all the zombies are naked with their body parts just exposed and flopping in the wind, if you catch my drift.
Yeah. I don't want to see that.
And I'm just like, I don't care about that. Like, before it was, a zombie apocalypse survival type situation. You didn't know what was going to happen. You were trying to, find a safe haven. I don't want to see zombie bits in my face like that.
Yeah.
And I was just really disappointed because I was looking forward to it because I like 28 Days Later a lot. That's one of my favorite post-apocalyptic movies.
I don't even know if I definitely know of it. I don't know if I ever seen it.
It came out a long time ago. I think it came out, like 2008, 2009, something like that.
Yeah, I know like the imagery of the opening scene, but that's about all I remember.
I've never seen it, but I've seen people talking about it. And I've seen discussions about how they apparently filmed in London and somehow made it look empty by 3 a.m.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's like the only trivia I know about it too.
I've heard about the new movie. It's funny. I looked at reviews and I saw a lot of people saying it was good, and then I see people saying it's bad. So it seems like it's right. Like it's got to be love it or hate it, because the first I saw was people saying it was good, and then I saw a lot of people saying it's bad. So I'm very curious now.
Yeah, I've seen more people say they hate it than they love it.
Yeah.
And personally, I think I'm just gonna wait for it to come to like HBO or Prime Video whenever it's free, because I'm a big movie goer. Don't get me wrong. I love going to the movies. Like way before COVID, there was a point in time I went to the movies 5 days a week, just watching something new because it was pretty good. Movie tickets and just movie going culture has just gotten way out of hand.
No, I
The
agree.
tickets are too high, and then the last time oh God, excuse me. And then the last time I even went to see a movie, the people were on their phone. They were whispering really loud. And I'm like, okay, it would be cheaper for me to just pay the $20 to rent this movie at home so I can watch it in the peace and safety of my own fucking house. And then I can watch the movie again for 2 more days if I choose to watch it.
No, for real,
yeah. Sometimes you get lucky with the audience. I think it usually depends on the movie too that you're going to see. Like if you're seeing a kids movie, obviously there's going to be whining kids in a theater.
Yeah, but you expect that for a kids movie.
Yeah, you do. But like it's in like other like adult movies, you would think too. Especially superhero movies. Like too many people like cheer and clap.
I don't like the clapping and shit.
They're not here. Like they're like the people who made the film aren't here. Unless you're going to a screening, you should not clap at a theater.
No, I agree.
Because I've had a few movies where I've gone to like an early screening for like I think I've got to see a movie like a month or 2 weeks in advance, but the actual people who had a hand in the production were there. And, they talked to everybody like, what'd you think of the movie? How'd you like it? What'd you like? What you didn't like? That's different because, you have to, they're asking you your honest viewing experience after you watch this early viewing. So that makes sense because one of them was a rated R comedy. I can't even remember what it was, but I know I told the people, I was like, this is hilarious. I love seeing, the bad kids, going off on adventures, kind of doing their own thing and then coming back together. And it was, just really enjoyable.
I think I don't know the name, but I know the movie.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
I think I know what you're talking about.
You got an early screening of a movie?
Yeah, I thought it was a hoax at first. I'm not gonna lie, because I was like, "There's no way I'm just gonna get to go see a movie this early for free." But it turned out to be true, and I get emails not periodically, but kind of every so about like, "Oh, here's a free ticket for the new Mission Impossible," or
"Oh man, just do that."
Here's a ticket to go see fucking this new documentary that's not going to be released in theaters yet.
Oh man, maybe they know. They're like, oh, he's on the podcast. We need him.
Honestly, like if somebody, they didn't even have to pay me. If I got, obviously like flight, room, and board to different places to get early viewings of movies, I'd love it and I'd go.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that way I know the clientele is going to be some people who have some sense about them. I can, enjoy the peace and quiet because I am one of those people. Don't talk to me during the movie in any capacity. Don't ask me no fucking questions. Don't tap me, be like, what just happened? What was that? And I'm like, just watch the fucking screen. I'm the worst.
Yeah. No, I get you. No, I don't like that either. When it depends on the movie too. Like I like sometimes audience interactions with like comedies when people are laughing. Obviously, not like talking during it. And then like scary movies, I feel like it depends on the movie. Like if it's a really shitty scary movie, like just talk throughout it. I don't really care. Like if it's actually like a decent movie, please don't talk. Like you got to kind of like read
the room, as they say.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know.
but that's really all I had. It wasn't too much. That question I proposed in the beginning was really it. I was like, let me make.
I got you. So I guess we're ready to move on, unless Tony has something.
Bless us, Tony.
Sorry, I knocked my headphones out. I don't know what.
I said, I guess we're gonna move on unless you got something to add.
Oh no, I don't. Sorry.
Okay, so 3, 2, 1. We're gonna be talking about all things Beach Boys. We just watched the Beach Boys Disney Plus documentary. that came out May of last year. Directed by Frank Marshall and Thom Zimny. I think okay. So it features all the Beach Boys and basically goes through the history of the band. I don't really know if we need an intro besides that. Tony, you want to add anything?
No, that's about it. I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, there's more to it, but that's a good summary.
There is more to it. So, I know. Well, I want to kind of start with Jerry. I know Jerry's like probably the least Beach Boys fan out of the group, the trio here. So I'm just kind of curious of what your overall thoughts were.
It was very interesting. Like I said it last time, I'm not a big Beach Boys fan. I'm like that whole surfer style of music. It just, never really clicked with me. And I don't have anything against them or Brian Wilson. They did make good music. It just, was never my cup of tea. But definitely, I think the most interesting was everything that kind of happened involving Brian Wilson with, his diagnosis of his mental illness and how that affected his music that he wrote, and even to him leaving the band. And I really hate to say it, but him falling into the trap of, oh, you're a celebrity who has this problem. I'm a shrink and I'm a little unorthodox, but I get results. But it's just a situation where you're in a controlled environment and you're so sedated that you just sign your life and everything away. And
yeah, I don't think they had much about that in the documentary, though. I know, like, they talked about a little bit about his mental stuff, but they didn't show the.
That was some other research I kind of did on my own.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, this seems like it's much bigger to the group.
Mm-hmm.
But that was just some side research. But it was very interesting. I've definitely got to give that man his kudos, because all the music that he wrote and still continued, to write all the way up until his passing, I was like, man, he really kept it going. And even hearing, excuse me, just how he handled his fame and stuff, I was like, wow, I never would have just kind of expected that. Especially, with, oh God, was it his first wife or his second wife? I think it was his first wife. When he was first starting to really see all the critical acclaim.
Yeah, it was his first wife. Yeah,
it was his first wife, because his second wife came when he was in that really bad situation with that shrink.
Yeah, they didn't even dive into that stuff at all in this documentary. Which, like, everything else is great. Like the history of the Beach Boys, like how it starts. I liked all that. I liked how all the members had something to say, all the living members at the time. But then it kind of gets to a point. I almost feel like this should have been like a 2-part or 3-part series. It gets to a point where it's just like the history just kind of dropped. It's like, all right, and we're the Beach Boys, and it was great. And like it skips over like the 70s and 80s and the 90s and like current era. I mean, they did a little bit of like the 70s and 80s, like how they kind of like fell off and got back on the craze.
That was like the arc. And
I
don't know. I don't
fall in redemption, which I thought was really like, falling and then coming back like that. I don't think anybody else could have done that, as a solo artist or a group.
Yeah, I think, well, the staying power of like the early songs is about like, it's very universal, like about like, trying to get with a girl and having fun on a beach and, cars and all that, it's definitely like anyone can relate to that, especially like younger audiences. And I think that's what made them like it. Plus, like it brought up the nostalgia. I think this happened in like the 70s or 80s when they had their like resurgence, because they like definitely fell off.
I think it was the 70s.
Yeah.
If I'm
the
not
Capitol,
mistaken.
like sent out their greatest hits, and then it was like all those original songs, and then they had that boom again, and then like the Beach Boys was in the zeitgeist, and then but like after that, like they definitely like kind of fell off again. Like they had, lack of a better term, like waves, like where it would be like very popular and then it'd go down, but then it kept coming, And like I was I love the documentary. I just wish it was like almost like a 3-part series or something, because like the stuff with Dennis Wilson and I guess they did touch about it, like Dennis Wilson and like Charles Manson stuff.
Yeah.
And then like just like, and plus Dennis's passing, I think in the 80s, like they didn't even talk about that.
Yeah, there was a lot that I was expecting them to, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And I was like, watching it, I think up to like the halfway point, I'm like, man, there's some things you're talking about now that seem like it had a much bigger impact than what you're kind of letting on. Because, it almost gave me the same sense of, kind of what happened with Queen, and how Freddie Mercury, he had his struggle with sobriety and things, and how I only know bits and pieces kind of from old interviews and the movie that they did about him. But, essentially how his boyfriend was pimping him out, and, he caught HIV/AIDS and everything like that. And he was, did the same thing the shrink did, just kind of isolating people from him to keep him, docile. And I'm like, man, there seems like there needs to be, like you said, another 2, 3. Personally, I think it should be, kind of a 4-part.
Yeah.
To talk about everything. Like, give Brian Wilson his own section to talk about everything he had to deal with. Give them the section to talk about, like you said, the highs and the lows of how they kept falling off and coming back, falling off and coming back. Because, eventually you can only do that so often before you just reach, that neutral state where you're not going to decrease in popularity, but you're not going to increase anymore. Like, it might fluctuate a touch, but not anything grand. And I wasn't disappointed in it, but it did leave me wanting more, if I'm being quite honest.
I would definitely agree with that. That's probably the greatest aspect of it too. It's like, kind of leave the audience wanting more, but at the same time, it's like they skipped through a lot. But like they really went thoroughly through the 60s career, like when they first started to like Pet Sounds and Smile, like that felt like very thorough. Like basically where they just stopped, like in the 70s.
Right after Smile.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know. I feel like a lot of it was kind of like past that was like very surface level, and it was really weird to me because I feel like they didn't even, I don't know. I might not have been like, I might not have noticed, but it felt like they talked a lot about Brian Wilson, which is like kind of what you expect. But like, and they talked a little like about Mike Love, but like I feel like we got like a little bit more of like Dennis's story and Brian's story, and like they don't really talk about. They mentioned like Mike Love and Dennis Wilson didn't really get along. Like they mentioned it kind of, but I feel like they didn't really explore it a lot. Like a lot of the conflicts like weren't really like. I feel like it was like a little glossed over. I feel like this was a little bit more like romanticizing the Beach Boys and like afraid to talk about like the sad parts. Or, like,
I 1,000% agree with that. Yeah. That's exactly how I felt.
Because it definitely felt like they were trying to paint an image like, oh yeah, we had times that really sucked, and we did struggle here and there, for certain things. But, as a family and as a band, we kind of moved past it, and we helped each other out of some of the rough spots. We really mourned the lossing of our drummer because he was a really nice and cool guy. But, we're not going to really talk too much about that. And I was like, something about that. You know how you watch something and it just hits a nerve like, no, this is not forced, but coerced is the term I want to really say for this.
Yeah, I mean, they did talk about low points like in the early career with the father. Wilson's father. I forget his name. Murray Wilson. They talked about him and like how he was basically abusive and like he sold the rights to their songs
without their consent. That really, oh God, that
was still in the 60s when they're like they're still like on their, the top of the wave, like they were still like in the heyday of the Beach Boys, and he sold the rights then. So like they missed out on like hundreds of millions of dollars. And I don't know. Yeah, it definitely would have been interesting to see a little bit more of the internal struggles of the band too, But they definitely touched on Murray and how he was an asshole. But that was kind of like the only thing they actually like dove deeper into.
Yeah.
Because he was like a common villain, like all the the
Yeah.
members could like agree on. Because like Mike Love
Yeah.
is kind of a villain of the Beach Boys too, but they like
Yeah, they can't make
he
him
has
look
so
bad in
much
this.
he looks as great as he could be because you know, he's probably has such a big part of like the name, you know, the Beach Boys now. So like he's the only member who could use the name the Beach Boys like playing on stage. So like I don't know. It's just like would be interesting to know a little bit more about that. But they had like too much
Yeah.
cooks in the pot, it seems like, you know.
Yeah.
And it just thinking back on what their father did with the abuse, and especially with him selling the rights to a lot of their really popular songs without their consent and stuff, it reminds me so much of how commonplace it is when, you know, a family gets together to start, you know, making music. It's always one family, it's always one unit of the family that has such malicious intent. Because, you know, we've seen it with the Jackson Five.
Yeah, I was about to
Like
say
you
that.
you could name 5 different family groups, and the drama that was around one person is so just taboo. They don't even talk about it.
Yeah.
That's true.
And it really breaks my heart because, you know, like I said, I'm not a fan of the Beach Boys, but they do have songs I like. You know, what is it? I Get Around.
Yeah.
Wouldn't It Be Nice? There's another one I can't think of. I was actually listening to it earlier. The radio it played it.
California Girls.
No, it wasn't California Girls. It
Good
was
Vibrations.
No, I know Good Vibrations. I've heard that in too many musicals. Hold on. Tony, take over. I just gotta look up there.
There was like one thing that I thought, a little moment from Brian Wilson that I thought was funny is like my understanding of what happened with Smile is he just wanted to make it, and I mean, I didn't know this before the movie and the documentaries that he was working on it alone while they were on tour. My understanding was that they were I knew that it was like his not pet project, but his project, and like they were like gonna perform it. But I didn't know that he was like fully alone doing it. And my understanding was they came back. He wasn't making any progress with it, and they're like, "Dude, we just got to push this out the door." And they finished it for him because his mental health was like severely like bad.
Yeah, he was definitely really deteriorating.
They didn't really like present it like that, and I thought it was interesting. One of the things that he said, like when he was talking about the elements and like the element of fire, he was like, they said something like, "Oh, you removed that from the album," and he's like, "Yeah, I chose to remove that because I didn't think it was appropriate for the Beach Boys."
Yeah, he does
And
talk about it later. Yeah,
I thought that was interesting because I thought if anything that like Mike Love or someone else would be like, "Dude, get this out of Smile."
That's what I would think too. I think there is a little bit more of that, but like it's not presented. But at the same time, I did think Brian did have at least that self-awareness, like to go like, oh, maybe this is a little excessive for a Beach Boys album. But at the same time, like it's such a interesting album. Like I listened to the 2004 version a lot, like recently, like where Brian finally finished the album, like, you know, in recent decades, and it's real. I mean, it's really good. You know, it's like definitely out there. It's definitely weird, but like that's what makes it great. You know, and he's really experimenting with all these sounds, and like no one was doing that then. It was fucking weird. It's as weird now as it would have been in the 60s. You know, it's definitely out there, but that's what makes it interesting. And it's like there's just so many dynamics of sounds like he had in his head. I mean, we could kind of go into that with Love and Mercy a little bit more, but like the things I just want to state, like that they gloss over too, like they didn't talk about Kokomo at all, you know, like the 80s era of the Beach Boys. They didn't talk about Kokomo, which was like their biggest hit of that era, and that's kind of what put them back on top, like in the 80s.
They played it in the end credit though for some reason.
Yeah, they just played it in the end credits, and then there's a point in the career where they're on Full House, and like Jason Statham becomes like a pseudo member of the Beach Boys during the 90s, like he plays drums for them and shit, and it's because of Full House, and like he's still like a pseudo member, you know, like he just like basically got to live his like rock star career. throughout the Beach Boys, you know. So like they kind of got something out of him too, because they got the younger audiences of Full House to be into the Beach Boys because of him and like go to their concerts during the 90s, and then he got to be a rock star, you know.
The song I was also thinking of was California Dreaming.
Oh, well, they do a cover of that. That's a Mamas and Papas song.
Yeah, I know it's a Mamas and a Papa song because I know that from, you know, a CD my aunt used to play a lot. But I heard the Beach Boys version. I was like, oh, I haven't heard this in a long time. That was weird.
It's still good. It's definitely good.
Yeah, it's still good
for sure. And yeah, Surfing USA is a great cover of Chuck Berry's Sweet Little 16. So it's
like a classic Beach Boys song. You can't think of the Beach Boys and not think of Surfing USA. Everybody was surfing. Surfing USA.
They took like the riff from a Chuck Berry song and just like made it a surfer rock song, and it's like you listen to the songs, they're like, oh yeah, this is the same song. And I'm pretty sure Chuck Berry like sued them and he gets like some royalties or something. Well, he did. Which I was like, when I heard that one, I was like, oh, okay. I'm like not mad at that one.
Hey, you can't be upset when you can hear the influence.
Yeah, I mean, Chuck Berry was a big influence on the band, just like from the start. I mean, I think they state that in the beginning of the documentary. So I thought that was cool. That they do like showcase all that. It was just like all those like kind of little details that they would like gloss over. I mean, definitely like the Full House cast and all that kind of cheapens the Beach Boys. So I understand why they didn't put that in the documentary. You know, it's like, oh, we became a fucking sitcom band, you know, like so I understand why they ended it when they did, but I don't know. It definitely would have been worth merit to like dive into that stuff too, though.
Yeah, because when you mentioned Full House, I was like, I remember the episode when the Beach Boys actually came on.
You seen
I
it?
think that was the first time I had heard Kokomo, and I think they did Kokomo and Surfing USA, and I think one other one.
Yeah, they did. I know they do like a cover of a song that Dennis Wilson wrote called Forever, and then like Jason Statham what's his name? What the fuck's his name? Not Jason.
It's not Jason Statham.
Why do I keep saying Jason Statham? Why did you like
Jason something?
Yeah, what the fuck is his name?
I don't know.
Uncle Jesse from this stupid show. It's not Jason Statham. What is his name?
Fucking.
Yeah, Uncle Jesse.
Oh, John Stamos.
John Stamos. That's
the same guy. Jason Statham, John Stamos.
Not too far off. It's the
yeah. Well, that's basically all I have to say about this. I'd probably give this like an 8 out of 10. I think it just loses those like couple points because, you know, I just wish it was a little bit longer. And there's so many like decades and eras that they could talk about. And they didn't even talk about now, too. I thought it would have been interesting if they like finished it off like, oh, this is what the Beach Boys are doing now.
Yeah, that was something I was also expecting because, you know, especially with Brian Wilson during it's the 70s and 80s when he was really just under that bad situation. I was expecting them to talk a lot more about how
they didn't even talk about that at all.
The band. Because, you know, Brian Wilson did a lot of the producing and songwriting, and he had a lot of the final say for what went and didn't win, you know, not for what went into the albums. So I was just like, this kind of rubs me the wrong way a little bit. But, you know, we can get into that more when we get into the feature film because they went into that some more.
I just want to read this comment. It says the fire song was removed because the building down the street burned down while they're recording. Brian got scared, believed that and he burned all the tapes. I didn't know he burned the tapes.
Oh.
I know some of the original recordings from the Beach Boys still exist, you know, because they have like the Smile tapes that came out like on CD. I remember buying that a couple of years ago. And then there's like so many edits on YouTube, like fan edits of like people putting them together. So I don't know if the tapes were burned down, but I definitely recall that like they stated they stated in the documentary that like this building burned down the street and the fire department did come like while they were recording that. And like that's when he was like wearing a fire man's helmet and made all the Wrecking Crew band members wear helmets. Like was like
Yeah.
running around with like smoke and like Roman candles or whatever the hell he had. It's just like a bunch of chaos. But
That's funny.
I guess I'm gonna just close out with my final review. Like I said, I give it an 8. It just, you know.
I'm also gonna follow behind that. I'm gonna give it a 7.5. There was a lot that they talked about that I just was very surprised and shocked to learn. But thinking back on the time period that this was, it's, even still today, that's still kind of commonplace when you have a family dynamic involved in a musical group. But definitely not hearing about some of the other things that, in my opinion, impacted the band just as much, if not more, that they just kind of skipped and glossed over. It definitely knocks out some points for me because it's interesting bits to learn, and it's the pieces that definitely have to be told for the full spectrum of where they started from and how they got there to be understood properly.
No, I agree. For sure. Tony, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd probably give this yeah, I think an 8. I didn't really know much of the early history or I feel like the public conscious kind of knows, like everyone. I don't know. I feel like it's kind of common knowledge, like the Beatles story, and like I didn't really know the Beach Boys story and how they were fighting in that era where it was like the British invasion versus the surf rock.
Yeah.
Kind of learn. And yeah, I guess I always liked Pet Sounds, but I didn't really appreciate it. And I thought there was one line where someone was like, "You don't understand. Like, you might like the album, but no one was doing this at that time." And like, never really like contextualized that. And like seeing like the full Wrecking Crew band in there, like kind of, made me appreciate the music more. But I wish they didn't skip over certain things. So probably an 8. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
And like I think what the human subconscious, like just like the general like person off the street, like thinks of the Beach Boys as like the earlier stuff. You know, when they're all in the striped shirts, like that's like the image like most people have, I think. So, but like you said, it's not as it's well documented, but it's not like as well known as the Beatles. But like yeah, it was interesting that like when they came, they're like, oh shit, what do we do? But like they weren't even ready for it, which is definitely interesting. And it was just like the last thing I want to add. Like I liked how they like kind of compared the two bands. They were saying like they're a little bit more polished with their like singing and like their harmonies, and like the Beatles like were more like like musician based and like more into the like rock and roll aspect of the music rather than like the polished like harmonies and doo-wops that they're kind of based off of, world they're influenced by. So I just thought that was cool.
I forget what song it was, but I think it was I don't know if it was Mike Love. It might have been Brian Wilson. They're saying, yeah, I listened to that song and I was like, I don't get it. This sucks.
Oh, what song was it? Wait, who said that?
It was either, they were talking about the Beatles. The Beatles.
Oh, it's like I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Yeah, I think it would have been that.
Yeah. I think it was Brian who did say that. Yeah.
Yeah. That does. Yeah, I think Brian did actually say that. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. Well, we'll just move on to the next movie. Love and Mercy. Came out 2014, I believe. Who the hell directed this? Bill Poulad. I don't know. Anyway, Tony, do you want to take over for Love and Mercy?
Sure, yeah. Love and Mercy. It's kind of like a split feature, but it's all about the life of Brian Wilson, and it kind of is very hyper focused on his mental. Well, a lot of it is focused on like some of the mental problems that he had to deal with, and like dealing with the band through that, and personal relationships and how that was affected, and some of the struggles that he went through. Kind of shows him, harnessing like kind of like just the way his mind thinks to like create like the sounds for pet sounds and smile, but also like kind of slowly become alienated from like he's starting to alienate himself from his band. And also we see an older Brian Wilson building a healthy relationship with a woman he meets at a car dealership who becomes his wife, while also cutting off an unhealthy relationship with a exploitative psychologist.
Psychopath. Fucking psychopath.
And yeah, I think that's about it. We kind of just see both stories like back and forth throughout the entire movie, which I really appreciated. I like when especially when you're telling like a true story. Like I think you have to do things like that to keep it like creative and interesting. Like I think when you do something biographical, you need to like have elements like that, and I think that was really cool to split the movie and go back and forth.
Yeah. What I like about this movie is like it hyper focuses like on two eras of his life. There's no way you're gonna like get the whole perspective of someone's life in like 1 2-hour movie. You know, like that would be a mini series.
Yeah.
Basically. So like if you're gonna make a feature film, it's good to like just dive in to like windows of his life and like I love the opening montage. It just kind of shows this is the Beach Boys. Here's the like Surfing USA, and you get what the band is, you know, like just from that montage in the beginning, and that's all you really needed to like have that establishment. Even if you didn't know who the band was like prior to watching this movie, it's like okay, here's the Beach Boys, and like now we dive into the story, you know, that we're gonna tell. So I like that aspect, but.
I think I want to go right in. If I was in the California law system back then, I would have put that shrink in federal prison and never let him see the light of day ever again. What he had subjugated Brian Wilson to was basically kidnapping and oh god, it's something else too. And
like extortion.
Extortion, yeah, thank you. Because he had at one point didn't he make it so that if Brian would have died, he would have been his sole beneficiary for all of his like a estate and everything?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Like, what the fuck kind of insane person do you have to be to take advantage of somebody who's who's hearing these voices telling him, you know, all these negative and very cruel things, and you're like, I got my next cash cow. Like that just that burns my soul so much. And I don't wish the worst on people, but he's one of the few. I hope that if the afterlife, you know, is a Carmack system, I hope he's at the absolute bottom of that food chain. Because to sleep comfortably at night, knowing that you got this man on all these different drugs, cocaine, LSD, all these different sedatives, just trying to essentially making him, you know, a walking zombie. You deserve what comes to you. And honestly, him just getting his license revoked didn't do enough for me. Like I really needed everybody to just go put on some hockey mask, get some aluminum bats, and bang them in the head 2 good times. Like I know that's extremely violent, but I really cannot stand situations like that.
Yeah.
It just is so just horrible, the malice that this doctor was just exuding. And that whole unconventional 24-hour therapy bullshit, no, he was essentially trying to condition them and brainwash them to, you know, believe the narrative that he was trying to spin. And and then, you know, Brian Wilson's second wife, I can't remember her name, God forgive me.
Melinda Ledbetter.
Thank you. Miss Melinda, you know, she was a nice lady, and, you know, she was helpful in the beginning, but, you know, she had her stuff that she was going through too. And so, you know, it eventually took them like 4 or 5 years after Brian got away from Langley and started getting real professional help that they reconnected. Like everything that she went through as well with her crazy bastard of a husband, stalker, whatever the fuck you want to call him. That also is just insane to me how people used to be back in that time period. Like
Yeah.
nothing about that should have people been comfortable with allowing. I guess it's because it's a more modern time and things like that do have repercussions to them. But that's just one of my hot buttons. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not laughing at you. I was just thinking about Jason Statham being in the beat now. I'm sorry. But yeah, it is pretty fucked up. Like the whole story, and and you know what about the biopics? Like Brian Wilson did have a big hand in like how this was told and portrayed. Like a lot of people, who have these music biopics have like huge egos and like, no, you can't show that. It makes me look weak. Makes me look like, imbecile. But like it shows all Brian's like weakest aspects. Like it's almost like as true to Brian Wilson as like it possibly could be with a movie. And I like how audible the movie is. Like it like really you go into his psyche of like how he hears sounds and like how he like basically like puts the music together in his own mind. Like he just hears voices, and he says that in the movie to his brothers, and they're like, what the hell? But that's like actually how he, like after he took all these psychedelics, like he kind of melted his brain. But after the psychedelics, like that's how he got all these songs. So it's almost like a double-edged sword. Like he definitely go further and further down like the psyche. So
yeah, and just even the fact like, obviously this was, I'm not going to say this was around the Sigmund Freud era because I don't remember my psychology history and facts that well, so please forgive me. But, you have documented research on what at that time, people were saying like, I've been doing LSD and I'm just, I'm seeing things that aren't there. I'm hearing things that aren't there. And you're like, oh, you know what? Let me give it to this guy who's saying these voices are in his head. Let me give this dude some booger sugar to help kind of take the edge off of him.
Yeah.
Let me just essentially make this man a walking corpse of, who he was, because I know he was with Langley at one point in the beginning for a year, but they let him go. But he was already so messed up on all the psychedelics and drugs that he was on that they had to be like, well, we don't really want you back, but you did kind of help, so please continue helping him again. And I was just like, no, don't do that, because if you let somebody go the first time that's supposed to be a professional giving help, there's a reason that you shouldn't go back again. And I think especially for me, Brian Wilson, he's, a real genuine guy. Like, yes, obviously he has his mental illnesses, he has his problems, but that didn't take away from, how nice and great of a person he was. And I really feel like all the psychedelics he was taking just, I'm not going to say stripped him of some of his humanity, but it definitely dulled the type of person he was in the beginning.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. I just want to read this comment. Mocha Bunny says, there's a creepy video of Dr. Landy sitting so close to Brian. It was being weird. Brian is just so out of it and fidgeting. I honestly haven't seen like real footage of the doctor. So, I mean, I'm a little curious, but yeah.
I'm curious to see some of that.
Yeah. I don't know how close he is to like Paul Giamatti's like portrayal of him, but like he does like an excellent job being such a raging asshole. Like he's I know he plays that character in other movies too, and he's just like that kind of character, and he's just so good at it. He's so good in this movie.
It's like J.K. Simmons. I play a dude. I play an asshole with a mustache who's needing kids. Sign me up.
Yeah.
But what's the actor's name who played Brian Wilson in the movie? It's Dano something? Paul Dano?
Paul Dano, yeah.
He did. I think he really did a fantastic job depicting the spiral downward that Brian was taking while he was seeing Dr. Langley, because some of that just raw and pure emotion that he was exuding, like that was, I'm not saying it made me tear up, but it definitely brought, like water to my eyes. Like, man, I really, like can resonate with this. I feel what he's feeling. He's a sick man, and he's trying to, put it out there like, hey, I need help. I need, somebody help me.
Yeah, that was John Cusack who did the older Brian when he's like going through the doctor.
Was it John Cusack? Okay,
Yeah,
that's
John Cusack did that. Yeah, and then Paul Dano did the Pet Sounds era Brian, the younger version.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of, the older Brian.
Yeah.
That wasn't like one of my absolute favorites, but that's one of the parts that just, you see it and it's like it just sticks with you because you can't get that image out of your mind.
Yeah, he does really well, like playing like a sick man, but at the same time, like being likable and approachable enough where like you could see Melinda actually falling for him instead of like being over the top and weird, where people are like wouldn't want to talk to you, So like he definitely plays that middle ground right, like really well, and you genuinely feel bad for him, So he does like a really excellent job. I mean, they both do superb jobs. Paul Dano too, as a young Brian Wilson, like both of their mannerisms. Like I know they met up with Brian Wilson. They didn't like exchange notes like how they're going to play the character. They just like talked to the like original source and kind of went with it that way, which I thought was cool. That like I'm kind of glad they did their own thing. Like they didn't even talk to each other about like
because that definitely helped differentiate. All right, this was the young Brian. This is the old Brian.
Yeah,
and like you still see tendencies mixed in between, but they did such a fantastic job just showcasing what he was like at two separate points of his life, both with highs and lows. And that part really did blow me away. I was like, man, I don't know who I like more, because everything that they're showing me is like, like what else is there?
Yeah. Tony, you haven't said much. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good interpretation of his life. I think it did pick like two really good and important points for the Beach Boys, and then I agree with the montage in the beginning. I really liked how Paul Dano portrayed Brian Wilson, especially like I'm glad that the Pet Sound sessions weren't just like one throwaway scene. It just kept going back to it, and it just kept showing him like directing the Wrecking Crew. I think that's what they're called, and then. It's not. You could like. I think that was acted extremely well. Where like you could just see that he just has like a vision, and like what they talked about in the documentary. He's not a classically trained musician. It's just like he hears or feels like what the song should be in his head, and he is trying to communicate that. And I thought it was. I don't know. I like the conflict between him and Mike Love was really good too, because you could just see Mike Love getting really testy in the beginning, being like, "Is this a druggy song?" And then just getting more and more frustrated. Like, why are you making them do this theremin part 400 times? They've done it like 400 times. Or no, it was a cello. It's like, please stop making me do the cello. Like you could, and then Brian Wilson saying, "You can leave if you want."
Exactly. I thought that was really funny.
That was.
I thought the actor who played Mike Love was really good. I liked all the actors who played all the Beach Boys. I feel like they both had like their moments to shine. I really like the actor who played Dennis too. Like he seemed like pretty fun. And then there's like one point in the movie where they're talking about it was right after Brian, I think, had his panic attack on the plane, and he's like, they're like talking to each other. They're on the porch, and he's like, Brian says something like he's losing his mind, and then Dennis looks out like on the balcony. He's sitting on the balcony. He's looking out on a lake, and he says, "There's a lot to lose." And I was like, "Oh shit!" I felt like that was like foreshadowing like how he passed, because he's looking out at a lake and he's like dead serious. Like that's the only time Dennis was dead serious in this whole movie, and like he's like right in frame with the lake, and that's how he died in real life, like he drowned. So I'm like, and they do talk, they do say that in the film. Like he says that to Melinda, like, oh, my brother died. He died 2 years ago. He drowned. So I almost felt like that was like a tie into that. I was like, holy shit. And with the Wrecking Crew, how they filmed that, I guess they got actual live studio musicians to like just play it live and like play out the scene. So like they're actually like playing the music, like kind of figuring out like how the song goes. So like that's why it's kind of like organic and authentic. So I thought that was really cool.
I know this was at obviously the very end of the film, but I think the part that touched me the most was, it's like I said, years later when Brian is, free of Dr. Langley and he's, getting the help he needs, but he almost gets hit by Melinda in the the Cadillac saleswoman. And, they like, hey, I'm got some of my baggage free. And she's like, oh, hey, I've got some of my baggage free. You want to go have a coffee and just kind of catch up and stuff? And then, that blossoms into a very healthy marriage and a stable relationship for him for, oh, God, what? His wife didn't pass until, what, last year, sometime like that? Or,
yeah, I think I read that last year.
Yeah.
I'm going to look into it, yeah.
And then, they obviously had several children together. And it's just like, this is, I know it's real cheesy, but that was really the high that I hope Brian Wilson got. Like, okay, I've been through all this turmoil, I've been through all this trauma, and I'm finally getting, my not just desserts, so to speak, but I'm getting my fairy tale ending. I've got somebody who cares about me, who loves me. I'm becoming a father of what? How many children did he have?
A lot. I think he had a few.
Yeah.
He became a father, and he, still continued inspiring, making music and leading more and more people. Because, like I said, I did do a little bit more research off to the side on my own, and I didn't realize, Bruce Springsteen, Sir Elton John, amongst many other musicians, still were like, Brian he showed even at his age, he's still willing to get in the studio, put out a song, and still put that not pen to paper, but put the musical notes to paper to continue making the music that made him such the big name that he was. And I think that's pretty freaking dope.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I couldn't really say it better myself. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Like final thoughts or just thoughts?
Just in general.
There's one interesting thing, just going off of the Dr. Landy thing that I thought was interesting. I was just kind of doing research because I wanted to know how accurate that portrayal was, and I mean, I guess I can't call it research; it's just Reddit comments. But I was just reading like kind of like recent conversations of Beach Boys fans and just like their impression of like, I guess like what actually happened in the comparison. It's funny. I saw a thread where a lot of the people were like, "Yeah, he was a terrible person," but a lot of people say that he did save Brian Wilson's life, and a lot of people were agreeing with that sentiment. Like, yeah, he saved his life, but then he exploited him. It's funny. I found another thread where people were arguing, and they were like, "How could someone not see that he was being exploited?" It's like, well, he's probably like a psychopath that's like a great manipulator. You can find people today saying that he saved his life, even after all we know.
Right.
So I just thought that was interesting.
I would definitely agree with that. Arguments. Like, I think he did like save his life in the beginning, but then he obviously was exploiting him. So like it's another double-edged sword. And his first wife, I think, was saying that in the documentary too, or she did in another interview I definitely saw with her that she said she thinks that he saved her. Saved Brian.
Yeah, and that's a very common thing, to happen when you're at that level of, fame and stardom. Like, oh, hey, like, yeah, I'm a shitty person, but if it also wasn't for me, this person would be dead. Almost something similar to, oh God, like how John, what's his name? John
Stay
Edward
low.
and Bela Lugosi. You know, like how he was, addicted to morphine and everything.
Yeah.
And then John Edward was like, hey, man, I don't got no money, but you need help. And, he did kind of help keep Bela Lugosi going, with all these weird small time roles and all these little small bits and stuff that he was doing. And, and that did start that movement of, even celebrities are not above, falling from grace.
Yeah, you're not wrong. He was the first one to go into rehab like publicly like that. I never thought I would hear an Edward tie-in to the Beach Boys, but like, I definitely enjoy it.
It's not what I was going for, but it's just thought provoking like that.
No, you're right. No, it's definitely a good connection. I just
because while the situation is, while yes different, there's still a lot of similarities in between all of it.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah,
I think this movie really did do a great job depicting what it's like to have a very serious mental illness that a psychopath while yes they help you, but they also exploit you with. And I think it's a great portrayal. Not everybody who comes to your circle is there to help, because you can go down any genre of just music, any timeline of just actors, musicians, directors, producers, whatever may have you. Because you could, if you want another similar one, it's similar to the Hispanic artist Selena, and how a complete, obsessive fan came into her circle and shot her dead and killed her. That who's to say something like that wouldn't have happened eventually if they didn't get Brian away from Dr. Langley. Not Langley, Dr. Fuckhead.
Yeah. They showed they even showed this. I know it's like a fictional portrayal, but they showed the housemaid like taking the pills and not even letting Brian take all the pills, and like was like, look at all of these.
Yeah, that's
crazy. And I don't know how accurate that is, but that seems like it could have been a path to like just killing him, kind of like in the same vein of Michael Jackson.
Yeah, I thought of that too. Yeah,
death by prescription drugs. It's still something we're fighting and dealing with today.
Yeah, it's fucked.
Yeah.
Well, he got out of it. He definitely lived like the long life, and out of all his brothers, he lived the longest, which is kind of wild.
Yeah, he got to make Smile.
Yeah, he got to make Smile. He finally got to make that record, which I definitely recommend. I definitely recommend listening to it. It's definitely out there, but that's what makes it good. I'd probably give this movie a 9 out of 10. I like how it shows like a weaker aspects of an artist and like how it is to have like a mental illness going, like, but being like kind of on the top of the world at the same time. And it shows like Brian Wilson's like actual humanity and weaknesses, and not like go like, oh, he's amazing, he's so great, he made the Beach Boys basically, which like they do kind of tie into that, but like at the same time, like, yeah, he was deteriorating mentally like for a long time, and I like how they show that. It's not like, I don't know, like these other cookie cutter like biopics where it's like, oh, they got their great hit, oh, the band's together.
Yeah.
Like it's just two connected dots, like I like how there is a lot of struggle in this.
Yeah, and that's something I will agree on. Seeing the high and the low with how Brian was fighting his mental illness while still also producing such, great music for the Beach Boys, and also during a couple of his solo projects, it definitely leaves something to be said. The brightest stars also have the deepest shadow, because, mental illness is always serious. And, even still today, we're learning on how to combat them and, make it so that they're more manageable and they don't suffer as much. But definitely Brian Wilson, in my opinion, is one of the best examples of what it's like to have, that extreme low and be, still in the public eye, like how Mocha Bunny said, there's the video of Dr. Landy sitting so close to him, and Brian's just, fidgeting and, just kind of essentially having, like like how you have too much coffee, you get the shakes. And, you're just real out of it. But also seeing him turn everything around and living a very fulfilling life, a very rewarding life, and even, a very inspirational life. I think that he, has not set so much as set a bar, but he's left a benchmark for people to, look at and say, yes, I've seen what it's like to be at a place of stardom with a degenerative disease, and I've also seen what it's like to have somebody take full advantage of it. But that doesn't mean you can't ever have a positive outcome at the end of that road.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go into my final thoughts. I give this movie a 9 out of 10. I really recommend it. It shows like the aspects of, his psyche, like in his head and outside of his head, like the perspective of others, which I find like really cool. And also like the depiction of his father. He's such an asshole in this, but like I feel like that's pretty accurate to like what actually happened in real life too. Like all like the more that they showed in the movie, and like especially seeing the documentary like right after, I was like, oh, that did happen, because they explained it a little bit in the documentary and showed it in the movie as well. The only thing, my little nitpick, like I wish the other Beach Boys members were like shown a little bit more, like had a little bit more characterization, but I understand there's a lot to kind of go through. They did show them, and I did like what I saw with other Beach Boys, but at the same time, I wish there was a little bit more. Like, I almost feel like Al Jardine didn't even have one line, like in the movie.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I know I've said probably the most because, just situations like this, we hear about it, we see it continuously, but it's just something that on the inside, it always burns me up because, that's not how family's supposed to do one another. And also within that, it's just the exploitation and, the dehumanization of taking advantage of someone who's got, a very serious illness about them. And, they're trying to get help and trying to be better so they don't, become the monster that, like the voices are telling them to be, or they act upon the impulses that the visions that aren't there are trying to show them. I definitely wish that, like Josh said, more of the Beach Boys had a couple more lines. I would have liked to see more out of like how they had handled, like, oh, well, Dr. Landy's doing all this and this to our brother. Like, how are we going to, get him out of this situation? But that's neither here nor there. I'm sure, behind closed doors they were talking and making plans and things of that nature. I know for me, this is a very solid 9. It was like I said, this was an eye-opening thing to see, especially because Brian Wilson, I didn't know he had passed recently until, last episode when Josh had said something about it for his picks. But I was like, oh, I know the Beach Boys. They make surfer music. That's not my thing, but I think it's cool. I would also recommend this movie, even if you aren't a fan of the Beach Boys. I think it's something everybody needs to see so we still continue to understand some of these physicians that see all of these people in high seats of, power and stardom and fame. They are just as wicked and evil as people at the bottom of that food chain. And I know that's been a lot of what I harped on about, but it's something that I can't ever get over.
I can't stop thinking of Jason Statham in the Beach Boys. I'm sorry. That's why I keep smiling in the corner. All right. I had to get that out. Tony, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'd probably have to give this around a 9. Yeah, no, I can't really think of like, I don't know why I don't have a reason not to give it a 10, but like I feel like I gotta reserve the 10s. But this is great. I feel like this, like that era of the Beach Boys is probably what I'm most interested in. Like I like the surfer chill like rock, but like it's not like the most interesting for me. Like Brian Wilson just doing his own thing, like, and all the composition is super interesting to me. So I'm really glad it honed in on that era and honed on like the aspects of his life that like were challenging, because it made like you understand him as a person a lot more. So I'd definitely give this a 9. I don't know. There's only a few things that I don't know. I guess that's still a strength. The one scene near the end where like you hear his. I feel like the first wife didn't really have much of a character, but I feel like that's not like even that bad of a thing.
I think
I
she
thought
had a lot like to do. At least like she at least had a character for like the little bit she had. Like she had a presence. But yeah, I know what you mean. Compared it to Melinda had a lot more of like a quintessential role. For sure.
More, I thought it was interesting. They didn't really talk. Not to go off on a tangent, but near the end of like the beginning part, I guess if you can say it like that, he's sitting at the pool and you hear his wife saying like, "Oh, he looks like you. Like it looks like you." Are they talking about like did he have children with his first wife, and he was just like so out of it that he was just sitting there? Did he just never did he just never see his children? Not have a relationship with them
probably, yeah. I mean, he deteriorated pretty quick right then, so probably. Yeah. I'm sure they have some interesting things to say about him.
Yeah. That's kind of what I. Sorry.
Well, he does have children with Melinda as well, so like he has some.
Yeah.
I was just looking at it. He has some young kids. Like some of them are like younger than us. I'm like, oh
yeah. Yeah, because I know he adopted a lot of kids.
Did he adopt? I mean, probably. I don't know.
I know he had the 2 biological kids, and hold on, let me pull up his. Yeah, he had adopted 5 other children.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Like, that's a lot of kids. That's 7 in total. Like, geez, man.
Yeah, it says he has 7 kids. I know some of them are biological and some of them aren't. I don't know.
Wow. Yeah. I guess I that's what I figured is what happened, but like I don't know. I guess I didn't really need to go into it that much more than what they did, but I kind of was. I don't know. I guess I didn't fully know that's what happened, so I guess I was kind of trying to put the pieces together.
Yeah, he kind of does state that too. Like
he says that he's like he wasn't a good husband.
Yeah, he said he wasn't a good husband. He wasn't a good father. Melinda, he does say that. But I do like that Melinda is like kind of like the protagonist of like the '80s era. Like it's like her perspective. She actually has something to do. It's not like she's just like the wife of the great musician. She has a lot to do with the plot and like pushes it forward.
Yeah, and her moment opening the door on him. And he's just defeated. He can't do can't do anything. He's screaming at a closed door that he knows that she's inside of, and the second she opens it, like face to face, he can't do anything.
Yeah, he's just
he walks away. Yeah, that was a great moment. So yeah, I have no reason not to give it a 10. So you've talked me into a 10.
Yeah, I'd probably push it closer to a 10. Than an 8 for sure, but I'll just give it a 9 for now. But
yeah, I think a 9 is real solid because it's a very moving movie. It's very touching. I'm reserving that 10 for maybe a second viewing.
I think he was really out of it and offered his daughter drugs, and that's why they got divorced. Oh, with his first wife. Yeah, I did hear about that. I did hear that. I remember hearing that. Yeah, that's not good. Drugs are bad.
Drugs are bad.
Okay. I just wanted to show off my shirt. Here's Brian Wilson.
Oh, that's a good shirt.
Pet Sounds. I saw him live in 2018. He's playing in Kingston. I mean, he definitely was out of it then too, but like for his age, he was pretty good. But yeah. So we're gonna move on. I guess the next episode we're probably gonna be talking about Superman and or Fantastic Four. I mean, we're definitely going to be talking about Superman.
I'm fine with just talking about Superman.
All right, good.
I think Fantastic Four is going to suck. I'm just going to say it. Really? Like, it's nothing against the actors, but this is the 3rd iteration now.
Yeah.
Because we had the Fantastic Four in the early 2000s. We had that really bad reboot 2016, 2017, something like that.
Yeah.
And then now we've got this one. So I'm just...
There's definitely, I mean, you could definitely make a good Fantastic Four movie. Has it been done yet? No. Can it be done? Yes. Will it be done? I don't know.
I think the first two we got, like, were they great? Not by any stretch, but were they better than what we've seen so far? Oh, easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least they held, accuracy to what the Fantastic Four is.
So Tony, I don't know if you want to reveal your picks now or wait till the next episode. That's up to you.
Yeah, I kind of I knew we were doing the Superman, so I still have to kind of think about.
All right, well, that gives you time to figure it out. All right.
I also need some time to figure out what I'm going to pick.
Yeah. So, all right. So next episode, we're going to be talking about Superman. What the hell is the title? Legacy. What the fuck is
Legacy,
it called?
I think.
Legacy something. What the hell is it called? I don't even know. The new Superman. We're going to be talking about that, so make sure to watch that before the next episode. Yeah. So
it's just called Superman.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
That was like Legacy or
just
something.
Superman. I thought it had Legacy in it.
That's what I thought. We got to figure this out. This is going to piss me off. I don't want to see
figure it
the
out.
boys. If you know in the comments what the name of this movie is called, comment down below. Okay, whatever. It's Superman. Whatever. Okay, 3, 2, 1. This is Josh from BatYard's Finest. Signing you off. Up, and away until next BatYard's Finest episode.
And this has been Tony from Star City.
And this is Jerry guiding you all with Green Lantern's light. And we're becoming super pals, one episode at a time.
Yay. All right. Well, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.
Bye. Yeah, Pedro. I'm sick of him too. Okay, bye.